A belief is like an impression stamped on our soul. The softer and less resisting the soul, the easier it is to print anything on it. Hi, welcome. Today I am discussing the essays of Michel de Montaigne. And this, what I read, is a selection that Penguin Classics did because there are way more essays than this. I wanted to start with just a selection because I didn't know what to expect and whether or not I was going to like them. And whoa, I really loved the essays of Montaigne. So here is a video of a selection of quotes that hold beautiful life wisdom. He also uses a lot of quotes from other authors like Horace, Cicero, and Seneca, and so on. And one of the first quotes that I encountered that really stuck was, "Why, in so brief a span, do we find the strength to make so many projects?" Which comes from Horace and his Odes. In his essay about death, Montaigne says, "If any of us were to be plunged into old age all of a sudden, I do not think that the change would be bearable. But, almost imperceptibly, nature leads us by the hand down a gentle slope. Little by little, step by step, she engulfs us in that pitiful state and breaks us in, so that we feel no jolt when youth dies on us," and so on. I think this is such a beautiful way to describe what aging does to us and how life slowly prepares us for that change. If youth would be ripped away from us in one single day, we would collapse. But because it comes slowly, we adjust to it better. Life is full of changes. We are constantly evolving and changing, and we are made to adapt to all of those changes. There's also a quote of Seneca that I want to mention that is pretty interesting. "No one dies before his time. The time you leave behind you is no more yours than the time which passed before you were born." And this really made me think about the fact that when you're gone, you return to the same state you were before you were born, so there was nothingness. And then after you die, there is nothingness again. You don't remember anything from before you were born because you didn't exist, and we are just returning to that same state. It is just incredible that we get to live life and that we get to spend this time on earth. And Montaigne says, "Wherever your life ends, there all of it ends. The usefulness of living lies not in duration, but in what you make of it. Some have lived long and lived little. See to it while you are still here." So he's basically saying, live your life now. Do everything that you want to do and don't postpone, because we are given one chance. I just also always try to make the small moments matter because they can be so beautiful as well. And we tend to delay the things that we love most for our duties. This is such an important reminder that we really have to incorporate things that we love into our lives every day, because this is the one life that you have to shape. Hey Toulouse. Toulouse has been boycotting my videos. At least the last 3 videos I've been filming, he's always popping up. I guess he just loves to come and say hi. Now, the next essay was on educating children. And there he talks, okay, we have company. And there Montaigne talks about education a lot and about speaking. So the first quote in this essay that really stood out is, "The world is nothing but chatter. I have never met a man who does not say more than he should rather than less." Yet half of our life is spent on that. They keep us 4 or 5 years learning the meanings of words and stringing them into sentences. Which is a reminder that a lot of people just talk to fill the silence. We tend to overshare, to overtalk, to overexplain. And we spend so many years learning languages. But do we really learn to speak with depth? Have we really thought through everything that we state and everything that we talk about? Half of our life is spent talking, but how much of that time is real communication and deep understanding? Montaigne's world was probably full of chatter, but ours I think, is worse. There is so much text in our daily life and also so much chatter, but the problem stays the same. It is quantity over quality. Silence is valuable, and I think this is a beautiful reminder that we should sometimes try to listen more instead of speak more. And also really listen when you're in a conversation instead of already forming your own answer in your own head. And when you really listen, you will probably come up with a more thought-provoking answer. He also gives us a quote of Seneca in this section. He says, "Speech devoted to truth should be straightforward and plain." And Montaigne later says, "Learning must not only lodge with us, we must marry her." I think this is my favorite quote from all of the quotes that I've gathered, because we must allow what we learn to transform us. You don't want to collect facts like someone who would collect trinkets. If we learn new things, then we also want those things to change us. And true wisdom is not about what you know, but what you do with that knowledge. In the next essay, it is called "That It Is Madness to Judge the True and the False from Our Own Capacities." And Montaigne says here, "A belief is like an impression stamped on the soul. The softer and less resisting the soul, the easier it is to print anything on it." We should not accept beliefs blindly. We should question things. And there's also the warning that early beliefs are so stamped upon our souls that it is really hard to step away from them. And most of our beliefs, they are not chosen, we absorb them. We have family, we have school, we have social media, we have culture, and all those things shape us without us even realizing it. And I think we should all be aware of this problem because it will help us with critical thinking. Reading widely is a very good way of practicing this, of challenging your own beliefs and being open-minded. Being ready to change your mind about things is very, very important in life. The next essay where I took notes was on solitude. We should set aside a room just for ourselves at the back of the shop, keeping it entirely free and establishing there a true liberty, our principal solitude and asylum. Within it, our normal conversation should be of ourselves, with ourselves, so privy that no commerce or communication with the outside world should find a place there. There we should talk and laugh as though we had no wife, no children, no possessions, no followers, no menservants, so that when the occasion arises that we must lose them, it should not be a new experience to do without them. So he says that we need a private room, a mental sanctuary, where nothing external can rule us, which is a very beautiful thought. He is not telling us to abandon our loved ones. He's merely saying don't let your inner life entirely depend on them. A person with no inner room may be prone to panicking more when something is taken away from him or her. And his advice may feel a bit radical in these times of oversharing and being constantly social. But the part where we are alone, the part in our daily lives where we are alone, is the part where we are truest to ourselves, because we are not performing, we are not pretending to be better than we are. And our habits and our actions says more about who we are than anything else. And I'm a bit ahead because he is stating this in his next essay on prayer. We can say whatever we want, but it's our actions and habits that show who we truly are. He was actually talking about religion and how some people pretend to be pious and pretend to be good, but their actions and habits are pointing to the opposite. His next essay on the inconstancy of our actions. Here he says, we are entirely made up of bits and pieces, woven together so diversely and so shapelessly that each one of them pulls its own way at every moment. And there is as much difference between us and ourselves as there is between us and other people. And then he closes it with a quote by Seneca, "Let me convince you that it is a hard task to be always the same man." Everyone who passes us in life can influence us or has an influence on us. I always try to learn something from every conversation because we cannot be stagnant. We need to change, we need to work on ourselves and, of course, also work on our weaknesses. And in his essay on drunkenness, he says the worst state for a man is when he loses all consciousness and control of himself. I fully agree. You should have control over yourself at all times. In his essay on the affection of fathers for their children, he says, since in sober truth things are so ordered that children can only have their being and live their lives at the expense of our being in our lives, we ought not to undertake to be fathers if that frightens us. And he also says, you will never achieve by force what you cannot achieve by reason, intelligence, and skill, which is very beautifully put. In his essay on repenting, he says, my soul is ever in its apprenticeship and being tested. He also says, anyone can take part in a farce and act the honest man on the trestles, but to the right ruled within, in your bosom, where anything is licit, where everything is hidden, that's what matters. The nearest to that is to be so in your home, in your everyday actions, for which you are accountable to nobody. There is no striving there, no artifice, which again refers to your actions and your habits in your private rooms reveals more about who you are than anything else. And here is a very special one, his essay on the 3 kinds of social intercourse. He says something about reading that I've been thinking about a lot because it's been going in my mind for a long time. Reading has its disadvantages, and they are weighty ones. It exercises the soul, but during that time the body remains inactive and grows earthbound and sad. I know of no excess more harmful to me in my declining years, nor more to be avoided. In other words, reading is very important, exercise for the soul. But we usually sit on a desk or in a chair and we are very inactive. And the problem is that nowadays we are more inactive than ever because we work before our computers on a desk, at least most of us, and we get so little exercise because when we come home from our 9 to 5 we are so exhausted. We need to cook, we need to do the dishes, we need to take care of the kids or the cats, and there is just no energy or no time left to work out. So I've been really working hard on my own health. My body was growing very weak, and so I'm doing my daily exercises for core. I'm walking my 10,000 steps whenever I can, and I'm really trying to do this every day because I feel like all of my hobbies, like being an author, is sitting at a desk. Working is sitting at a desk. Fortunately, I have my massage business where I at least have some exercise, and my music is sitting on a piano stool, reading is sitting on a stool, and so now I often just walk around while I'm reading or reading on my walking pad. And this was probably one of my best investments ever because I have this walking pad where I can just walk and read at the same time. I don't need to worry about traffic when you walk outside. So yes, it is very handy to get in those extra steps. And this is just a reminder for you how important it is to get your body moving. So important, especially when you get older. You don't want to lose your muscle mass and your mobility, like we said in the beginning where he quoted that your body is going to get more aches and more pains as we grow older. So very important to get your body moving. And walking, by the way, is one of the best things you can do for yourself. In his next essay on the lame, he says, I find that we should be saying virtually all the time, it is not at all like that. I would frequently make that reply, but I dare not, since folk bellow that it is a dodge produced by ignorance and by weakness of intellect. So I am usually obliged to be a mountebank for the sake of good company and to discuss trivial subjects and tales which I totally disbelieve. Moreover, it is rather rude and aggressive to flatly deny a statement or a fact. A few people fail to assert that they have seen it themselves and to cite witnesses whose authority puts a stop to our contradictions. So he says that it's basically very difficult to go against what someone says. I think there's a time and place for it. I know that some people, when you talk to them, you immediately notice this kind of wall and they don't allow you to disagree. They are so glued to their beliefs, and this leads back to another quote of Montaigne that we discussed earlier. But this just is another reminder that it's so important to be open-minded about things. And when you're in a conversation, don't try to be too glued to what you believe, because the other person might say something that makes a lot of sense. Also, the way that you disagree with someone is going to be the most important thing, because when you disagree and you do it very rudely, and when you are yourself so convinced of your truth, then the discussion isn't going to be a very comfortable or thought-provoking one. And the last essay that I wrote notes on is on experience. No desire is more natural than the desire for knowledge, which comes from Aristotle. And then he says, Montaigne says, we essay all the means that can lead us to it. When reason fails us, we make use of experience. When reason fails us, we make use of experience. That is so smart and beautiful. He also says, we must learn to suffer whatever we cannot avoid. Our life is composed, like the harmony of the world, of discords as well as of different tones, sweet and harsh, sharp and flat, soft and loud. If a musician liked only some of them, what could he sing? He has got to know how to use all of them and blend them together. This is the perfect quote to end the video. I hope you will be reading this selection of essays for yourself, because they are so thought-provoking and beautiful. So I think Penguin Classics did an amazing job of making a selection. Thank you for spending time with me, and I hope to see you next week. We're just waiting here, okay. Hey Toulouse, here he is again. Goed zo, flink, ja, goed zo liefje. Liefje? Liefje? Ga je neerleggen, schatje? Alsjeblieft. Please. Come on, liefje. Come on. Come on.